Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Our lead story this morning is regarding Joe Biden and the Democrats' $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill. And yes, for those that are not watching the show, I did air quotes around infrastructure because it's not so much as an infrastructure bill as it is a social welfare bill. And we'll get into that in a moment here. But Joe Biden and the Democrats are saying that this is free. Quote, it's going to cost $0 according to Joe Biden and the Democrats. Let's figure out how they work this one out. But this comes from once a newspaper, the New York Post, and they title it, Biden hit for claiming Build Back Better agenda costs $0. What an idiot. He's just lying, as well as the Democrats, the American public. President Joe Biden was slammed over the weekend and Monday after claiming his Build Back Better agenda costs $0 in a Saturday tweet. Well, the tweet said this, my Build Back Better agenda costs $0. Instead of wasting money on tax breaks, loopholes, and tax evasion for big corporations and the wealthy, we can make a once-in-a-generation investment in working America, and it adds $0 to national debt. What a bunch of garbage. Take it from an old tax accountant before I switched careers. I used to do corporations taxes. This whole idea of when politicians say loopholes is a bunch of BS. Whenever you have a conversation and you hear anybody talk about loopholes with taxes, you shouldn't listen to them automatically because they don't have a clue what they're talking about. They've never done taxes. I'd go as far as they've never even seen a damn tax return be completed or even done before. And they're going to use this word loopholes. All we do as tax accountants is basically take numbers from the books and we report them according to the code that's being given, whether that's the IRS code, or even if you're doing assurance and advisory accounting with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. All we're doing is reporting the numbers and we're being told where to put them, so we put them in a place. You can't blame the accountants. You can't blame the tax firms that are doing these corporations' taxes for knowing the laws and the codes that are on the books and reporting the numbers in the correct place they're allowed to. So this whole thing of saying these loopholes where they're doing some shady business and kind of gaining the system and all these things, you helped create the system. And so you have people that know the system. And so they're just reporting things according to the system of which you created. So if anybody, any politician, any friend you have, family members talk about loopholes, it's a bunch of shenanigans. Well, also, he's saying it's going to add $0 to the national debt. Well, how do you get that, Joe? How do you come up with that this whole thing is going to cost $0 to the taxpayer and at the same time say it's going to cost $3.5+ trillion because you're going to have interest on all this, right? Where are you going to get the $3.5 trillion, Joe, if it's not going to cost any money? You're just going to kind of create it out of thin air? You're just going to print all this money and create massive inflation on top of the inflation that we already have? Or, Joe, are you going to tax the taxpayer, the American citizen? But according to Democrats, we're just going to tax the wealthy like Bernie Sanders always says, right? The 1%. We're going to tax the huge corporations like Walmart, Sam's Club. You know, all these people, when in reality, they're lying to you folks. They're going to have to tax low income, middle class, and the rich as well. They're going to have to tax everybody to pass this thing. And I don't know if people realize we're $28 trillion plus in debt right now. So explain to me how you're just going to create another $3.5 trillion out of thin air without paying down our national debt. It's a lie and it's so frustrating. And as I've mentioned, this is one of the biggest things I have a problem with in both Democrats and Republicans, the constant spending. Don't call yourself a conservative or a fiscal conservative if you're okay with this crap. When Republicans do it or Democrats do it, it needs to stop now. We're literally spending $100,000 every 2 seconds. Our federal government is spending $100,000 every 2 seconds. And it is so frustrating because we constantly vote these knuckleheads in. Again, Republicans and Democrats, we vote these people in and they're screwing us over. The average American taxpayer owes almost $300,000 to the federal government if our debt was called in a span of a second. Yes, I think it's $288,000 to be exact. Somewhere in that ballpark, the average American taxpayer owes. The average American citizen owes $83,000 to the federal government if we were called on our debt, that $28 trillion. And these idiots want to now pass $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill when in reality, it's a social welfare bill. Well, where am I getting that from? Biden's agenda is looking to be funded by a $3.5 reconciliation bill that contains funding for the climate, family leave, education, and expansion of the society safety net. The spending bill has become a point of contention in Congress as Democrats battle over when to vote on the bill and its overall price tag. Well, $3.5 trillion isn't enough there, Joe. Can we add in another 0.5 in there just to round up? Just that even 4.0 just sounds really nice. Who cares? They don't care. The American public, we're going to sell it on them because we think they're idiots. They're just going to believe us that everything's for free. This money comes out of thin air and all this other stuff. You know, there's a debt clock that you can look up, a U.S. national debt clock, and that's where I'm getting the $28 trillion from, and as well as the kind of the average of $100,000 every minute is wow, my numbers are going all over the place. Every 2 seconds, we're spending $100,000. And it's just nuts here that we just look past this and think that it's okay. And so he's being called out here by Congresswoman Tenney. Simple math for President Biden, 3.5 trillion does not equal zero. Well, that's good math there. House Judiciary GOP says this is a lie, and that's absolutely true. Representative Steve Womack says this is completely false. The largest spending spree in the government history will cost $0. That defies logic and basic math. Well, when you have a senile geriatric old man running the executive branch, as well as Nancy Pelosi, who tries to just lie through her dentures every week, they don't get the idea of how math works, logic, and they're just not all there. Alongside massive tax increases, it will add trillions to the debt. Peddling false narratives won't change those facts. No, they won't. And then we're just screwing over whoever's going to come after us, whether that's our kids, our grandchildren, their grandchildren. Somebody's going to have to pay this back at some point. It's not like it just disappears. I know we want it to. And this is kind of how American society has gone, where we just constantly throw everything on credit. You want a new car? Finance it. Who gives a crack? Pay interest on it. You're not really paying $60,000 for that new car. In reality, you're going to pay $75,000 for that car. Oh, we should just lease cars when the average national lease is about 14% increase on wherever you're at. But it's a good investment, you guys. Cars are great investments. And I know I'm rambling here, but it's frustrating because as somebody that gives people financial advice, as somebody that teaches personal finance, it is so frustrating when everybody's just okay with throwing everything on credit and just spending, and then that results in us passing through these people on our voting ballots here to now spend. It's just a trickle-down effect, and now we're all going to get screwed. Well, you have Tom Cotton here. Biden thinks his $3.5 trillion reckless spending plan costs $0. It's not just Joe Biden. It's the entire Democrat Party, the progressives, the libertarians, the Democrat Party, just everybody is just knuckleheads here. And we're allowing this to happen. In real time, we're just okay with it. We should be in the streets combining and protesting here because it needs to stop. When is it going to stop here? And the Democrats are going to they're just going to raise the debt. They're just going to allow that spending to happen. And I just don't know when it's going to stop. And I wish people can understand how serious this is. How much of a negative effect this has, not just on America, not just on our economy, but on specifically the taxpayer. We are so screwed in the future. I don't even have words to describe how effed we are. And people don't get that. Why? Because they think this is going to happen. It's not going to happen in their lifetime. Right? It'll happen in somebody else's lifetime. We'll have to pay that back later. Oh, nobody's going to call us on it. It's going to be fine. We are digging ourselves such a hole where literally we're only going to be able to pay off the interest of our debt. We're not even going to be able to pay off the principal of the 28 trillion. Let that sink in a little bit. Imagine you living your life right now, only paying off the interest on your debt and never going to be able to pay off the principal ever. That's where we're getting at right now with these social programs that we're putting in place here. Oh, well, Brad, I'm a leftist, and well, aren't we spending a ton of money on military? No, we're spending a lot of money, but not, if you look up, right, it's a government shown document here of our budget and how much money goes towards the military compared to social welfare programs, like social just programs in general, like health and all that stuff. It's just through the roof here. It's through the roof. We need a restructuring happening. I know we don't want to hear that. I know we don't want our Social Security touched, but why not? Why not create a plan where those that are born, say, in 2022, don't pay in the Social Security? We have to figure out a new method for Social Security for ourselves, those that already paid into it, or will continue to pay into it and reap the benefits, and then have the average American learn how to invest their retirement properly through mutual funds or other investment opportunities through maybe passive income, other than portfolio funding, and figure it out themselves. You don't need the government to handle your retirement. FDR, regardless of why he did it and those things, we don't need that today. We don't need us and the government to dictate what the hell we're going to do with our retirement. Just do a compound interest, folks. Just do a compound interest of the money that you put away every paycheck for Social Security. Put it in a 6% mutual fund. Just create it yourself, right? Just do the numbers yourself and see how much money you could have for retirement compared to what you'll be getting from the federal government through Social Security. I think your head would spin. The government should not be in the business of dictating what you do with your retirement money. Well, here's what the Senate version of the Democrats' $3.5 trillion spending plan looks like here. So where are they putting this money? Broader supports for families. The resolution calls for multiple measures that were contained in the $1.8 trillion American Proposal Plan, which Biden unveiled in April. Well, the budget framework seeks to establish a universal pre-K program for 3 to 4-year-olds and a new child care benefit for working families, which is astonishing to me because why should my taxpayer dollars have to go for your choosing to have children? I didn't decide to have children. So why am I having to pay for your child care when you're the one that made that decision yourself? I don't understand that. It's like we're screwing other people over for other people's decisions, and it's constant. And that's how Democrats' framework works for these social programs. Because you make bad decisions, and I'm not saying having a child is a bad decision. That's not what I'm saying. I think it's one of the best decisions that you could do as long as you can financially support yourself and your children and make the appropriate decisions in life for those children that you're trying to raise. But the whole point of it is, I didn't decide to have children. It's not something that I should be paying into. And I'm just going to leave it at that before I dig myself a hole here. Under the American Families Plan, the federal government would invest $200 billion in universal preschool for 3 to 4-year-olds through a national partnership with states. The administration estimates it would benefit 5 million children and save the average American family $13,000 when fully implemented. Now, here's the thing, on average $13,000, but the problem is they're not changing the behavioral finance of the individual. They think they're helping somebody out by constantly giving them money or freeing up that money, that they're going to then take that money and make wise decisions with it. But here's the problem. If some Americans aren't making the wise decision not to have children, hold off for a bit so they can maybe get rid of their debt or make the proper investments in life before they have that children and make the correct decisions, then they wouldn't be running into this issue where they're spending thousands of dollars on childcare and then look for the federal government or the states to now fill in that void there on that gap. And that's exactly what the Democrats are trying to do. It would be accessible to families of all income levels, but states would be required to foot about 50% of the cost when the measure is fully up and running. Wasn't that just lovely? Because we're not already taxed through the roof here in California. We're the most freaking taxed state in the nation. The framework also calls for enhancing child care for working families. Under Biden's proposal, low and middle income households would pay no more than 7% of their income on child care for kids younger than the age of 5. Parents earning up to 1.5 times the median income in their states would qualify. The president also wants to invest more in the child care workforce to bring their wages up to $15 an hour from the typical $12.24 or $12.24 hourly rate they earned in 2020. And this is what the federal government is in the business of doing. Not only filling that void in people's pockets for decisions that they chose, but now they're also trying to increase the minimum wage, or they're trying to increase just the federal minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour. I've done a ton of videos on that. Everybody knows my viewpoint on it. I'm not for it. You should leave it up to the states to increase the minimum wage if you want to have it. I'm not even for that. I think it should be left to the individual to decide what they are worth and what they want to work for. And look, if you opt in to make $7.25 an hour, that's your choosing. You opted in. You signed the agreement. You put in a freaking application to the place that you knowingly knew. I know that's kind of doesn't make sense, but you knew that you're going to make $7.25 and you signed the dotted line and you're going to bitch about you making $7.25 an hour. I don't get it. I know it sounds like I'm pissed off. I just don't understand the logic, and I sit there and I reflect off the show how the hell all this makes sense, that you're going to complain about how much you're making, but you're the one that agreed to how much you're making. Like, why are you complaining then? You agreed to it. If you don't like it, quit and find another job and make more money. Well, Brad, you're making it so easy, so simple. If you don't like what you're making at that one job, then get another job so you can make more money. That's what I do. If I don't think I'm making enough money, I will go get another job and work and acquire certain skills and traits that then can help me progress in my career so that I can make more money. Or why don't you talk to your employer and see what boxes you need to check off so that you can make more money? Because the dude's just not going to give you more money just because you think that all of a sudden one day you agreed to $7.25 an hour and next day you think you should get double according to Joe Biden, even though you're doing the exact same job, you haven't acquired any other skills, you're doing the exact same skills you were one day as you are the next day, and all of a sudden, according to Joe Biden, you deserve to make double now, from $7.25 to $15 an hour, even though you're not offering anything else to the company, to the employer, or to the business. It's illogical. And just like the spending packages, it's illogical. It's just so stupid. You can't even wrap your head around it. You can't. I've read this thing twice now. I can't wrap my head around it. as far as why you would do it. I get the whole Democrats. Trust me, I get the other party side. All I'm saying is I'm tired of the spending. Spending, spending, spending. Where the hell is savings? What are we teaching our youth by constantly doing this? What are we teaching them? I showed seniors in high school our national debt clock, and they couldn't understand why our politicians, not a single student in years of doing it, not a single student could understand. And mind you, there's conservatives in there, there's Republicans, there's Democrats, there's far left. None of them, not a single student, hand to God, could understand why our politicians were spending money that we don't have. Why is it that a senior, a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid can understand that, but these, politicians can't get it through their head? You want to know why? Because it's not their money. It's not their money. In the same way, push vaccinations on everybody else, but you in Congress pass your own little thing where you don't have to get vaccinated. It's not mandatory for you, but it's mandatory for everybody else. That works in the federal government, according to Joe Biden. It's frustrating. This is we're on a tyrannical trajectory, right? And historically, that has happened. We're an outlier as far as democracies go in republics. We are a far outlier here, but that's the direction that we're going. And I'm being honest. I'm being sincerely honest. That's the direction that we're going to go, because when you have this kind of spending, you're giving government more power, because now you're going to end up owing the government more money. They're going to pass laws and legislation that's going to hinder you from doing stuff. And we're already kind of seeing that now. And they're going to keep spending, and then expect you to pay. Well, there's also expanded federal health care programs and assistance. Well, I thought Obamacare was supposed to fix everything. What happened with all of that? I thought the Affordable Care Act was kind of the set-all-be-all thing. Then that was going to fix the health care. Then that was going to fix all the problems, according to Joe Biden. We all know how that one went. The blueprint recommends adding dental, vision, and hearing benefits to Medicare, as well as lowering the eligibility age. Both long-standing goals of Budget Committee Chairman Bernie Sanders, an independent from Vermont, BS, not an independent, a socialist, an open socialist. And this is what CNN does here, because this is the article from CNN. I figured I'd pull up a leftist article here, because you know what? If they're going to try and spin this bad boy, we're going to sit there and call it out. He's not an independent. Even though he says he's an independent, he's not. He's a socialist, and an open one at that, who caucuses with the Democrats. Nearly half of Medicare beneficiaries, or 24 million people, did not have dental coverage as of 2019, according to the recent Kaiser Family Foundation report. The resolution also calls for extending the Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies contained, in the Democrats' American Rescue Plan, which was passed in spring. The subsidies reduce the amount Obamacare enrollees have to pay no more than 8.5% of their income and make assistance available to more Americans. Also, lower income policyholders can receive subsidies that eliminate their premiums completely, but the boost in aid is only available this year and next. And this is what they're going to do. People have to understand, if you're going to give them the leeway on this with healthcare, it constantly expands. It's not that if government just sits there and retracts all the time. It's extremely hard, and very few governmental programs, when you give them this type of power and you're inflating it, very rarely are you going to have those times where you're going to have that deflation happen with these programs. So if you're throwing this kind of spending in healthcare with dental, vision, right, as well as hearing, that's only going to expand. Government only gets more powerful, and that's the problem that I have, not just as a fiscal conservative, but also as somebody that doesn't like big government, is that government's going to constantly get bigger when you need it to be smaller. All these people that want from the federal government need to have a restructuring and a reordering in their thinking, because at first you're supposed to go to your family, right? Brother, sister, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, whoever the hell is in your family, in your bloodline. You go to them for assistance first. Then you go to your local community, like churches, maybe your neighbor, things like that. Then you go to your state level if you need to. Go to your state level, seek assistance that way. If that doesn't work, then the federal government should be your last beck and calling. And there's a great movie called, it's with Russell Crowe, called Cinderella Man. He's a boxer. He was going through rough times, and before he became a boxer, he had to go to the welfare office and he had to get a welfare check. What ended up happening was he got famous in boxing. He made a ton of money, and he went back and tried to pay the government for what he took. You don't see that today. People don't have that virtue within them, that morality within them to pay back what other people gave them. Maybe that should be a thing where you could pay back somebody. I mean, I understand we have taxes, right? And that maybe you'll technically pay back more than you receive through taxes if you became wealthy. I get that logic. But the whole idea of what I'm talking about here is the idea of the fact that he had the wherewithal to understand that he's taking money from the federal government, that he's taking money from his fellow countrymen, and it shouldn't feel good. That's not a good feeling to take money from other people. And when he became successful, he tried to pay it back. And we don't have that in today's society. Everybody just wants to take, rather than give. And that doesn't stop a lot of people from giving, by the way. There's a lot of religious people and non-religious people. We're the most giving and prosperous country to donate our money to other people as well as ourselves. And that's why it's so frustrating when you have the government just wanting to spend, when we already have Americans trying to foot the bill on a private level by donating money. Well, what else are they trying to do with this damn thing? They're trying to combat climate change because that's infrastructure. Didn't you guys know climate change is infrastructure, folks? No longer are the days of building bridges, roadways, railways, trying to fix actual infrastructure that the average American utilizes together as a community. But, me paying for somebody else's kids' childcare, that's what we all use, right? Because we all have children. We all use that childcare program. Let's just all pay into it then. The resolution seeks to make investments aiming to meet Biden's goals of reducing economy-wide carbon emissions by 50% and for the U.S. power grid to get 80% of its power from emissions-free sources before 2030. I'm sorry, that's just not a good plan. It's just not a good plan. This whole idea of just being sustainable on green energy for now, just technology's not there for it yet. And we're trying to push and force these either private entities or these government entities, or the private entities are being subsidized by the government entities to create this innovation. It's just not there yet for it. Do I want green energy? Yes, I do. But we're not there yet to run our 80% of its power from free emissions. We're just not there yet. And this whole idea, windmills and solar panels are just going to run the whole show. No, they're not. It's a bad idea. It's a very bad idea right now. And I just love how they're forcing the American economy to do this whole thing, right? Whereas you have China and India, just these other nations that are kind of going through their own industrial revolution, or should I say their industrial age, basically, and just pouring emissions into the air. It's how I correlate it is this. Just imagine if the globe was an entire trash can. And everybody's throwing their trash in there, and Americans go, you know what, we're going to stop throwing our trash into the trash can, but everybody else can just continue to do it. But we're going to just have our stiff neck, and, our collars popped, and we're not going to throw our trash in there. We're too good for it. While everybody continues to throw their trash into it, we're not going to have any damn effect on anything because all of a sudden we just decide to stop. Everybody's going to continue to throw their trash in there. It's going to continue to get filled up. But let's just screw our own economy. Let's just screw over our entire power source here, as well as the American taxpayer on all this stuff, because this stuff has to be subsidized in order to go through, which is why you're seeing it in the infrastructure bill. Hence why it's called subsidized, because the government is subsidizing it. I know I'm repeating myself. I just want to be clear here, because it's so frustrating, and it's going to continue to get worse here because Democrats just want to spend, and we got 3 years. We have 3 more years of this crap. We're only in year 1, folks. It calls for implementing new polluter fees, creating new consumer rebates for home electrification and weatherization, providing clean energy, manufacturing, transportation tax incentives and grants, and electrifying the federal vehicle fleet and buildings. Sounds all good. Doesn't it just sound great when CNN writes this? But they don't look at the numbers behind everything because they're being lied to. Look at the same people that are saying that this stuff is going to cost $0 are pushing this bullshit. It's the same people. So why am I going to take and believe what you're saying that, we're going to have these new tax rebates for people, but those aren't loopholes. Remember, those aren't loopholes, even though they're allowing the rebates, right? The tax accountant's going to look at the law and just say, hey, just let you know you have a tax rebate on this. We're going to go ahead and file this. That's not a loophole, though. Corporations that take advantage of this, they're just taking advantage of loopholes, you guys. They're just tax evasions. That's all they're doing. Bunch of idiots in Congress. Invest more in infrastructure and jobs. So let's read this a little bit. Maybe there actually be some infrastructure in this. The Democrats want to make even more investments in infrastructure projects that would not be funded by the bipartisan infrastructure package. Oh, of course not. Biden wanted some of these investments in the infrastructure bill, like improving aging veterans administration hospitals. I would like that. Boosting American manufacturing, job training, and workforce development programs. Nope. But also wanted bipartisan support, and the provisions were cut out during months of negotiations. The budget resolution would invest in affordable housing, Native American infrastructure, and create what Biden is calling a civilian climate corporation to deploy thousands of young people to work, conserving public lands and waters, bolstering community resilience, and advancing environmental justice. All that is just fancy words for just giving people free money. That's all that is. And I know Democrats and the leftists are going to try and spin it, construe it, affordable housing, Native American infrastructure, and create what Biden is calling a civilian climate corporations. It's just all, again, I know I'm repeating myself, folks. I'm very aware of it. It's just giving people free money. That's all this is about, is just handing people free money. And I shouldn't say it's free, right? Because you're going to be paying for it. I'm going to be paying for it. The other dude that's listening to the show is going to be paying for it. The other gal that's listening to the show is going to be paying for it. Your family members are going to be paying for it. And by the way, but this is all free, you guys. The government's just going to hand it out for free. When in reality, it's 3.5 trillion plus interest, by the way. At no point are they really saying, oh, how we're going to sit there and run and crunch the numbers here and make sense of it. You notice that you'd be hard pressed to really find an article. You'll find it, by the way. But what I'm saying is, if you just Google what's inside the infrastructure bill, how they're going to pay for this thing, it's really hard to sit there and actually find a logical structuring of how they're going to pay for this thing, because all they're saying is, oh, we're just going to tax the rich. That's just, the shit's just going to figure itself out. We'll just tax them. I'm telling you, it's not going to work that way. As a tax accountant, I am telling you, they are lying to you. I can't be any more clear that. Try to just pretend that I'm not a conservative Republican. Just pretend that I'm just sitting there giving financial advice across the table, regardless of your political party. I'm telling you, they're lying to you, and I can't be any more clear than that. We are going to be royally screwed. I would like to think I know a little bit about finances, right? I'm not saying I know everything, and I'm far from knowing everything. But when I know a disaster's coming, I'm trained on that. I am trained when somebody's doing something stupid with their money to call it out. The government is doing something very stupid with their money right now. And they have been for a very long time. Both Democrats and Republicans in Congress have been doing a shitty job of running this country financially. You guys better be terrified when this stuff gets called in. And I'm not taking that from pure emotion. I am taking that from pure logic and reasoning. As somebody that does financials, you have to be worried and start preparing for higher taxes in the future. And if it's not coming through you, it's going to come from your children. So you better create virtues as well as certain behavioral finance skills within them to prepare for when we're called on our debt. I'm not saying that 28 trillion is going to be called in all at one moment. It's going to be called in short over time. But we can't allow this to happen. I can't be any more clear than that. This is going to be the worst disaster, I think, in American history when we have to pay back this debt. It's going to slow our economy. When we slow our economy, it's going to have ramifications on the individual. It's going to have ramifications on the family. It's going to have ramifications just statewide. It's going to have ramifications federally. And lastly, because everything flows through the American dollar, you're going to have a massive, drastic issue globally as well. And when you get into that, you got massive issues here on the dollar deflating, the dollar crumbling. When the dollar crumbles, the global economy crumbles, and you're gonna have just a devastation and a depression like you've never seen before. I could be wrong, and I pray to God I am wrong. I pray to the Lord and Savior that I am freaking wrong. And lastly, I want to end with this, because clearly there's a lot of emotion in this show when I do them. But something you guys don't realize is off the show, I'm not always like this, right? I pray for our president. I pray for Congress, and I want them to do well. I want our nation to do well regardless of who's in office and who's in Congress. But it is frustrating when this stuff happens. And so I just want to take a moment to pray for our politicians and pray for our president to make wise decisions here. And I hope those prayers are answered. And maybe they won't be now. Maybe they will be in the future. But if you're not a person of faith, that is 100% okay. You don't have to join us in this short prayer. But I am a Christian. I am a follower of God. I do make flaws. I am not perfect. And at times I maybe even seem hypocritical. But over a time of reflection, I do this show to see how my views have changed, as well as try to encourage others and maybe change other people's viewpoints into becoming a conservative. But I do want to take a moment right now just to pray for our president and pray for our government to be successful in their wisdom and everything they do. So, Lord, Heavenly Father, creator of the heavens and the earth, I just want to take a moment right now, Father, to pray to you, and please pass down that wisdom from the heavens to not just to our President Joe Biden, but all to our politicians and leaders of this country. With that wisdom, I pray that they make good and wise decisions, logical with reasoning, Father, and not just out of pure emotion and not just out of empathy all the time. But again, Father, doing the right thing for this nation, and not just doing the right thing in the short term, but building something that will be ultimately prosperous for the long term as well. As we embark in these next 3 or 4 years, Father, with this current president, I pray that the mistakes are limited and the prosperous decisions are expanded upon and virtuous in everything that he does, Lord. Please give them not just wisdom, but also strength to run this country. I pray that you can give Congress the strength and wisdom to run this country as well and make, again, the wisest decisions possible. And for the fellow countrymen, even though our times are harsh and tough during COVID-19 and the restrictions and the mandatory vaccinations and everything that's going on in this country, I pray we can take a moment and just kind of step back and see that we all are Americans. And even though we might fight and bicker and argue, I pray, Lord, that we could just come together and unify with one another and love one another at the end of the day, because politics does not run our everyday lives. It's the love and the things that we have in common, like movies and food and children, and just the everyday occurrences that we have that bring us together. Politics just ruins and changes us, Father. So I pray that ultimately we have conversations, we have love and compassion for one another. And with all those things, I pray these precious things in your name. Amen. So normally I don't pray on air. It is kind of awkward for me. I've never even done that. But hopefully that you can share in that prayer and maybe even expand upon it. And I know that prayer is lacking in so many ways, and I'm lacking in so many ways through those prayers. I wasn't planning on doing it. I just felt called to do it right now as I'm recording this. Hopefully, if that's something you guys want to see in the future and we can pray together, I would love to do that more. We hound Joe Biden a lot. We hound Congress a lot. It is frustrating. There's a lot of emotion that goes into it, but the emotion is combined with logic and reasoning. And there's going to be some devastation in the future if we don't figure this out now and do some restructuring with our budget. We can come back from this. It's not like it's doomsday or anything like that. We can come back, but it needs to happen very, very soon. So like something in the future doesn't happen. Well, with that being said, folks, I know the show was long. It's great to see all of you. I'm going to try to be more on top of the shows if I can. Again, you know that I work multiple jobs. I am very tired all the time. But I do appreciate you all watching and your loyalty, not just to the show, but also to our country, America, as well. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching the Bald Brad Show. I'll see you all tomorrow, and God bless all of you.